Members of one of the most powerful tribes in Yemen, along with rights activists, staged a rally Thursday morning on the outskirts of Sana'a to condemn Saudi war crimes in Yemen, particularly a recent Saudi bombing of a crowded funeral ceremony at the capital, which killed more than 140 people.
We have gathered here in this tribal rally to condemn heinous war crime committed by Saudi Arabia. Targeting a funeral ceremony is an unprecedented war crime that reveals the real intentions of the Saudi military campaign in Yemen. We have come here to say we are determined to defend our country.
Saudi Arabia initially denied responsibility for the fatal attack, but on Saturday finally admitted that the attack was launched by one of its warplanes, which wrongly targeted the funeral gathering. Demonstrators on Thursday said that the international community has failed to respond properly to such Saudi war crimes in Yemen.
We have lost our hope in the international community, so we are determined to defend our country by all means possible and to teach Saudi Arabia that the invasion of Yemen is not a walk in the park.
The rally came as a fresh UN-brokered ceasefire took effect.
Regarding the ceasefire brokered by the UN, we are keen to respect it, as we are defending our country against a brutal aggression by Saudi Arabia. As the leader of our revolution has declared, Saudi mercenaries have violated the truce by advancing in Nihima area, but we are determined to foil any plot.
On Wednesday, the British Minister for the Middle East called the early October funeral attack as a deliberate error and revealed that it was ordered by the Saudi monarchy. Experts believe now the world is getting to know about the extent of the Saudi war crimes in Yemen. A strong UN Security Council resolution is needed to put an end to Riyadh's atrocities in Yemen. Mohammed Attab, Press TV.
This man has been formally charged for shooting 2 teenagers, killing one of them after he found them in his backyard. This is 48-year-old Keith Hammack. He's facing charges of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and illegally growing pot. Now, earlier this month, we told you about this case where police say Hammack shot and killed a 15-year-old boy and injured a 14-year-old. They say Hammack also shot a 17-year-old last September in a similar instance.
Information tonight, case closed. It was one of the most gruesome crimes ever in our area. 4 women murdered during a Delhi Township robbery 46 years ago. Now, the last remaining killer is also dead tonight. But Not on Your Side's Tom McKee explains why some detectives aren't quite ready to let the investigation go.
The Cabinet Supreme Savings and Loan stood on this Delhi Township lot for many years. It's long gone now, but what happened there on September 24th, 1969 will never be forgotten, especially for one retired Delhi Township police officer. Robert Chetwood patrolled the township for 27 years and has been retired since 1995. But he says he can't forget what happened at Cabinet Savings and Loan.
There's always that one incident that sticks out in your mind, and this was one for me that still is in my mind today.
Chetwood was one of the first officers on the scene. He knew the vault held 4 women dead of gunshot wounds. Lillian DeWald was a teller. Sisters Luella and Henrietta Spitzel plus Helen Hubner were customers.
I knew that this had to be something I never want to see again in my life. It was a horrific sight, and it was enough to affect your life forever.
A trio of robbers thought the SNL had lots of money, but they only got $275 and opened fire on the women as they left.
They said they wanted no witnesses, so they figured if they shot them, there'd be no witnesses. However, we did have numerous witnesses.
No Witnesses is the name of a book on the crime, written by reporter Kate March and former Delhi Township Police Chief Howard Macon. Watterson Johnson was arrested in New Mexico 4 days after the crime. He was with John Levi Lee at the time. Both men died years ago. Raymond Casa was caught shortly after the murders. He recently died in prison.
I was happy. I was glad that he's gone. He should have died the electric chair numerous years ago, but the courts overturned, the Supreme Court overturned that years ago.
Chetwood says he feels the case is now closed, and he hopes the families of the victims feel the same way too and are at peace. Tom McKee, Not on Your Side, Delhi Township.
A police shooting has landed 1 man in the hospital in serious condition tonight.
This has all been unfolding over the past 2 hours near the intersection of East Washington and Sherman. That's where we find RTV6's Liz Adiola with more now.
I recently spoke to the family members of the man who was shot. They say two of them were there in the room when those shots were fired, but they didn't want to say much else on camera at this time. Metro Police, however, are speaking out, sharing what they have gathered so far, preliminary information about this case. According to police, they were called out to the area here on the east side near Washington and Sherman Street to investigate a theft. When the officer arrived, it turned into a domestic situation between a father and his daughter. This is all according to police. That's when a third person got involved in the situation and gunshots rang out.
At some point during that discussion, the father was on the ground. The officer apparently had placed him there. We don't know if he placed him there or if it was over a fight. We just don't know at this time. A third individual that happened to be in the house became involved in that situation and, according to a witness, started to remove the officer's gun from his holster. At that point, a struggle ensued over the weapon. 2 shots were fired. The suspect is in the hospital in serious condition.
And I do want to update you, this scene near Sherman and Washington has been opened up. Police have cleared the scene, so that is why we have been able to get a little bit closer to where this all took place. Police asking anyone with information about what may have happened. If you saw anything in this area earlier today around 3:30, they are asking you to call police and share that tip with them at this time. The man who was shot is in the hospital. He's at Eskenazi Hospital, listed in serious condition. Reporting live on the east side, Liz Adiola, RTV6.
Deal with the terrorists. Or, pardon me, will it be a bigger challenge, I should ask, to deal with the terrorists if they operate in scattered bands?
I think it's very clear that the ISIS forces will have great difficulty surviving if they lose Mosul. They will face opposition from every direction, particularly from the south with the fighters from Iraq, their supporters from the liberation movements in around Baghdad. The problem will be the Turks and the Kurds, who are playing a role here, obviously in alliance with the United States in expanding their influence. The question is where they're going beyond Mosul. Are they thinking of occupying another part of Iraq, or are they simply adding to the anti-ISIS front? I think we have to keep in mind that the opposition is not only from ISIS, but the entry by the Turks and the Peshmerga are also a threat to the sovereignty of Iraq.
Mr. Petros, how important do you think this liberation of Mosul is for the morale of both the Iraqi people and maybe more importantly so for the Iraqi military itself, for what took place 2 years ago in Mosul?
I think it's a very important morale booster. I think the fact that they were able to defeat ISIS in a decisive confrontation, these are all positive factors that should put enormous energy behind efforts to reform the government in Baghdad and to form a very national perspective rather than a sectarian perspective.
And we know that Turkey wants to forcibly, intervene in this liberation effort, against Iraq's, wishes. Why do you think Baghdad is so suspect of Ankara's motives when it comes to Mosul?
Well, because the Turks have indicated a desire to reconstruct the kind of mini Ottoman Empire. They have been working with the Peshmerga and the Kurds in dividing up parts of Iraq. I think they are a very dangerous entry into Iraq, and I think once they're there, it's very difficult to oust them.
Thank you for your input, sir. That's Mr. James Petros joining us out of New York. He's a Middle East
Well,
expert.
for more now on the situation in Mosul, I'm joined on the set by France 24's expert on terrorist movements, Wassim Nasr. Wassim, what's the latest you've been hearing about what's been happening on the ground around Mosul?
Actually, since 3 days, there's a push from the east and then from the southeast too. And we know, for example, if you can see the map, that the French artillery is based just under the town of Al Houd, where we see in here. So we see French artillery, U.S. artillery, and U.S. special forces trying to bomb all the defensive positions around the town of Mosul, so all the villages. Yesterday they had very harsh fighting in Al Houd, and today we got to know that 2 new fronts got opened by the Peshmerga and also by the Iraqi forces. If you can see the map, also it will be much clearer. So the infighting is very intensive, and here we see the 3 axes of advancing today towards Hammam al-Alil and towards another town called Ashura, more north, which is a dense populated area, but we're still very far from the town of Mosul that we can see here on the map. And there's another, today the front that was opened, it was from Bashika through Bartella, which is around 20 kilometers away from Mosul. Infighting is around Bartella now, not in the town. They're not far from the town. And the northern front, which was opened also today from towards the town of Batnai, and Tel Kif is a stronghold also where the Islamic State is present. And we see that the Peshmerga and the Iraqi forces are trying at least to destroy the first defenses, the first line of defenses and the second line of defenses of the jihadis. And from the jihadi side, they are putting up the fight. They sent more than between 20 and 25 kamikaze attacks since yesterday. Here we see the jihadis in the town of Mosul at the night of the first attack. So they deployed into the town to show that they hold the town. Of course, they are masked, and they are masked for a very particular reason, because that we know that a kind of rebellion was tried to be incited by the coalition forces and by the Iraqi forces. There had been more than 15 executions of people in Mosul. Today, 2 Peshmerga, Kurdish Peshmerga that were caught by the jihadis were executed, and their bodies were put under a bridge. So the fighting is very intensive, but up to this point we are still far from the town of Mosul, and we are still witnessing warfare in small villages and in open spaces, which has nothing to do with fighting in urban regions. And if we can maybe look at the map one more time, we see that the western side of the town of Mosul is kept open. We're gonna see it. The western side is kept open for a very simple reason that we see here, that all this region till Tal Afar and till Sinjar, where the Islamic State conducted attacks yesterday, is still held by the jihadis. And we know that in military warfare, when an attacking force is trying to encircle a town, whatever the town is, they always leave a way out in order for the people defending the town, in order to shorten the period of fighting. But as the American president said it yesterday, and as all military experts are saying, the fighting can be long, and still we are very far from urban fighting that we can witness in Mosul, as we witnessed in Fallujah, for example, in Ramadi, in Beiji, in Tikrit, remembering that all those towns were completely destroyed, and the population is today living in camps.
Wassim, today the French President François Hollande, speaking in a conference about the future of Mosul, said that Islamic State leaders are already fleeing the town. What have you heard about that?
I didn't hear anything from this sort, but maybe the French president is maybe informed from his sources. But what we should know is we are in wartime, and in wartime there's what we call psychological operations, which means trying to demise the enemy by hitting his morale. So by saying that the leaders are freeing the town, maybe the soldiers will flee, and maybe the population will rise against the jihadis. So this kind of information is to be taken very carefully. It might be true, but it might be not true too. We heard the same thing before the Iraqi forces took Fallujah, Ramadi. We always hear the same thing. And one more thing that we should point out, that the local leaders in the town of Mosul and in the province of Nainawa are mostly Iraqis from the city and from the same province. So like 10 out of 15 most prominent leaders in the town of Mosul and in the region of Nineveh are from this region. So we can imagine that they will put up the fight, even though that they might maybe try to exfiltrate their families. But I guess that it is too soon to say that they're abandoning the town, because up to this point, there is no real military pressure on the town itself in order for them to push them in order to leave the town and trying to flee the town.
All right, Wasim Nasr, thank you so much for that.